Welcome to this explainer. If you pull up a standard world map, you're going to see lines dividing up nations. But the actual reality of global power, it doesn't really live in countries anymore. It lives in nodes. We're talking about a handful of cities that operate like massive, complex machines, literally controlling global money, technology, and influence. So today, we're going to decode exactly why certain cities become the ultimate command centers of human civilization, while others just fade away. Seriously, think about this for a second. How does a tiny island manage to control trillions of dollars? How does a city that covers just a fraction of the Earth's surface dictate the future of entire global industries? Take Singapore. It's an island with practically zero natural resources, and yet it's a vital artery for global trade. Or Dubai. It was literally a quiet desert settlement, and today it magnetically attracts billions of dollars. So what actually makes a city powerful? And who is really pulling the strings in these global capitals? $1 trillion. Just wrap your head around that number for a second. That is the sheer, mind-bending scale we're talking about here. Places like New York move more financial weight in a single afternoon than entire continents. A single neighborhood in one of these cities can process more foreign investment and trade value in one day than some nations do in an entire year. But to figure out how all this power got concentrated into just a few square miles of steel and glass, we have to look back at how this global machine was actually built. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the origin of power. To really understand the present, we have to retrace how city power evolved. It all started with the ancient trade routes of Rome, eventually shifting to the geographic dominance of ports in Venice and Amsterdam. But then the Industrial Revolution hit. And after World War II, the rise of container shipping and massive aviation networks completely changed the game. Suddenly, multinational companies could operate from anywhere. Geography absolutely still mattered, but infrastructure and connectivity, they became the new king. Fast forward to today, in our digital internet economy, and these highly connected nodes are often way more powerful than national borders. Moving right along to Section 2, financial capitals of the world. That historical evolution we just talked about, that is exactly what birthed our modern titans. Let's look at New York. It is the absolute command center of American capitalism. Built on a foundation of massive industrial expansion, it's now home to the globe's heaviest investment banks, hedge funds, and a huge concentration of Fortune 500 giants. London, on the other hand, inherited its power from the history of the British Empire. But its modern resilience is all about being the ultimate global connector. Even with all the uncertainties of Brexit, London maintains absolute dominance in global currency markets. Why? Because it offers an incredibly resilient financial architecture and a legal system trusted by the whole world. And when you look at the numbers, the statistics are just staggering. New York's economy alone generates over $2 trillion. To put that into perspective, that's more than the entire national economies of Canada or South Korea. These cities offer unmatched innovation, an abundance of jobs, and this almost inescapable economic gravity. But, they're legacy powers. They were built over centuries. And that's fascinating, because the next tier of cities we're going to look at, they change the rules completely. Which brings us to Section 3, the new global giants. Unlike those legacy cities, these places are what you might call manufactured miracles. They built immense power basically from scratch. Take Singapore. Since it gained independence in 1965, its transformation has been an absolute masterclass in planning. Driven by the vision of Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, this tiny island heavily leveraged an elite education system and extreme political stability to generate explosive GDP per capita growth. It made itself an indispensable hub for global trade and massive foreign investment. Now, critics will definitely point out that this economic success comes heavily paired with strict government control, but the economic results are undeniable. Then there's Dubai. This is a masterclass in the economic pivot. It started out as a pre-oil desert settlement. But when oil was finally discovered, leadership didn't just sit on that wealth. They weaponized it directly into infrastructure. Dubai aggressively shifted gears to become a global aviation and tourism hub, which sparked a massive boom in real estate and finance. But, as neutral observers, we also have to note that this kind of hypergrowth has drawn sharp focus on some really complex labor issues, intense wealth inequality, and massive environmental costs. Meanwhile, looking over at Asia presents a really fascinating contrast. Tokyo is the roaring engine of the Japanese economic miracle. It's an absolute powerhouse of manufacturing and tech, although today it's actively battling the challenges of a shrinking and aging population. Hong Kong, on the flip side, leveraged its robust financial system and historic trading routes to become the critical gateway right into China. But today, it's navigating some very intense political shifts. Both of these cities hold massive economic gravity, but they are definitely facing incredibly complex futures. Let's move to Section 4, the hidden cost of power. Because, well, there's a catch. Behind all these glittering skylines lies a really severe human problem. The immense wealth generated by these capitals comes with crushing real-world consequences. The extreme demand to live and work in places like New York, London, Hong Kong, or Toronto creates a severe housing crisis. The wealth generation just completely outpaces housing supply, relentlessly pushing average workers further and further away from the actual centers of opportunity. So, hypergrowth ends up being a real double-edged sword. Yes, it brings wealth, but it also brings extreme wealth inequality and crushing housing affordability. It places intense daily pressure on infrastructure. We're talking subways, roads, and power grids being pushed right to the brink of failure. Add in rising climate risks and overpopulation, and a pretty stark reality emerges. To be a powerful city means you are constantly battling the very pressures that your own success creates. Finally, Section 5. Who controls tomorrow? The global capitals of 2050 might end up looking entirely different from the leaders we see today. To survive this next century, cities have to master a completely new checklist. Step 1, absolute integration of AI. Step 2, a full transition to sustainable energy. Step 3 is climate adaptation, because cities that literally cannot protect themselves from rising seas and extreme weather will physically lose their power. And Step 4, relentless talent attraction. At the end of the day, a city is only as powerful as the minds it can convince to stay. And that brings us to the challengers. Places like Shenzhen and Bangalore, which are scaling up as absolutely unprecedented tech hubs. You have Riyadh, undergoing a massive state-funded economic transformation. Miami and Toronto are acting as massive magnets for global capital and fresh talent. These are the cities actively playing by the new technological and environmental rules, and they are positioning themselves right now to dethrone the legacy titans. I want to leave you with this thought. Cities are not just concrete and steel. They're not just grids on a map. They are profound, living human experiments. They represent our highest ambitions, our fierce competition, and ultimately, our survival. The world's most powerful cities will constantly rise and fall based on how well they adapt. The ones that can solve their hidden costs while maintaining that magnetic gravity, they are the ones that will shape the entire next century. Which brings us to our final question for you. Which city will control your future? Whether you live right in the heart of one of these global giants or 1,000 miles away, the decisions made in these highly concentrated nodes of power are going to impact your economy, your technology, and your daily life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching World Decoded. Make sure to like and share, subscribe, and stay curious.